Gina, I am so excited to talk to you this evening, and I do want to note that it's this evening after you've had a long day of teaching and you are generously offering your time and your insights. So tell us a little bit who you are, what you teach, where you live.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me. I am a first grade teacher in a gen ed classroom in Manhattan, Illinois, so a little town about 60 miles southwest of Chicago. I also tutor Orton Gillingham. I am Orton Gillingham trained, so I do that. And yeah, that's a little bit about me and my little town. And I do work in the town I live in and that my kids went to school in.
Oh. So have you always been using Orton Gillingham and what we now refer to as the science of reading as a teacher to teach your students how to read?
I have not. I actually used balanced literacy in when I first started teaching, where I went to school, and the districts I worked in used balanced literacy practices, um, doing leveled readers and running records, teaching kids the three cueing system. And that's the only way I knew how to teach reading. That's the only way I knew how to support my readers. And my daughter had always been a struggling reader, and I always did what they said. Um, have her read more, give her more books. So we were doing all the things. And when COVID happened, and I was starting to notice before COVID, but when she was home, I was really starting to see the struggle. Plus, my son, so she was going into sixth grade, my son was going into third. I was seeing then the difference kind of even out. I was seeing what he could do compared to her. And then it became kind of like glaringly obvious that we had a problem. There was something going on with reading. It was more than just exposing her to more books. And I went and got her tested. She was diagnosed with dyslexia at that time. And I knew as a teacher, this could not be it. This cannot be the way. It cannot be just sit and have her read more books because I watched it at my own house. It wasn't working. And I'm telling teachers or I'm sorry, I'm telling parents to do that for their children. So I went down the rabbit hole and did so many late nights, so much time all day researching until I found the science of reading research plus Orton Gillingham. And once I had my daughter tutored by an Orton Gillingham tutor, she was our advocate as well. She was wonderful. I thought, this is what I need. This is the training. This is the approach I need for my students. And that's where
Let's
that journey started.
rewind. Let's
Sorry.
rewind. No, no, no. Fantastic. Let's rewind for just a second because
Okay.
explain balanced literacy and explain what it is and why maybe it doesn't work as well as some of the new methods that you're using now.
Yeah, so balanced literacy, I'm not sure exactly the time that that came in. I think in the 80s maybe is when it started to become, and I don't even know if it was called balanced literacy. It was more the whole word method where not we, the instructors at the time, the people at the time, the professors were thinking we input words with our vision, so we must be visually memorizing them. So if we just keep exposing to words, and keep reading books, eventually the brain will memorize these words. Also, this is where the three cueing system, where look at the picture to help you find the word. Look what word would make sense in the sentence if you can skip over that word and figure out the rest of the sentence. We were giving that our students and us. I truly believe I had some of my struggles because of this method as well. We were giving children guessing strategies. We were not having them attend to the code. So because of that is some students learn to read still, but we're showing in our national uh, scores and everything that most kids are not learning this way, and they're learning the way poor readers learn to read instead of supporting them. And I heard it once in the Soul to Story podcast. Balanced literacy is a bottom down approach. So we're looking at the whole word and starting there, where structured literacy and the science of reading evidence based practices start and go from the, did I say that right? Top
Yeah.
down approach. Balanced literacy is a top down. Structured literacy would be the bottom up approach.
Letters and sounds building
Yes,
a
yes,
word and then moving up to what a whole word would
right,
be rather than
mm,
starting with a whole word and thinking that we can have a child memorize the whole thing by sight,
right.
but instead starting at the bottom, the sounds
And
and the letters what the sounds make, the patterns, and building a word. Is that
Right.
the
That's
way?
exactly what I meant. Yes, thank you. I'm
So
talking so fast because we know by the science now we were never born to read. We were born to speak. So our brains are made to speak and communicate, but man created the code. So our brain had to adapt to that.
So you had this epiphany, which I
Mhm.
hear from so many teachers and mothers, and particularly mothers, that the epiphany often comes when it's your own child and you see
Right.
your own child in front of you and you see things not working. So you saw this with your own child. You
Mhm.
realized for many of your other students it wasn't working. You dive into this personal journey and then tell us, so what is the science of reading? How did you begin to figure it out? What did you do? Because I'm sure there's a lot of teachers out there that say, I want to help my students too. How do I even begin this journey?
I get that a lot, and I feel like I'm maybe a good person to go to for that, but also I don't know because I took so many long ways around, and there wasn't much when I started researching it as there is now. So many teachers are sharing their stories, but the science of reading is a body of research. It is not a curriculum. It's the body of research of researchers for decades. So this is not new that have been studying how the brain learns to read. So we're looking at this research now as educators and professors and specialists and saying, wait a minute, we are not just looking at a word and memorizing it. Our brain is inputting it. There is this whole process going on that essentially is using many parts of the brain and connecting the sound to print. The the best example when I first started reading, I was reading articles, I was reading books. Moats, her Speech to Print is a great book to start with. It is hard in the sense that it's very technical. Um, so I have a lot of books that I started with, but the one thing I remember reading in one of the books was that when you look at a person, you can forget their name, or you can look at an item and say, "Oh, hand me the whatchamacallit pencil." It takes a minute sometimes for the brain to recall the name of it. That
Hmm,
has never happened when you read a word. Tell me if you've ever read a word and had that moment of, "What's that word? What's that word?" And that, in a very easy, short sense, tells us that we're using different parts of the brain. So
interesting.
knowing that is when I was like, okay, if we teach knowing how the brain now is trying to connect sound to print, then we can start doing exercises and activities to support that. So I started with
Mm,
doing things like mapping. So instead of just having students repetitively write spelling words, I had them use sound boxes or symbols for each sound. And I also started using a sound wall, which there is not research behind that yet. Hopefully, there will be someday. Not that I know of, but someday there will be. And educated myself on the sounds and the articulation.
mm. So important. Explain that. So I first heard it this way. When you are helping your child, you're saying "buh," "duh," "fuh." Write that
Uh-huh.
on a piece of paper, and I would write the F, and they would say, "Really? Listen to it. Fuh." And I said, "Oh, F-U, D-U.
Uh-huh.
That's actually what I'm saying." And they said, "Is that the letter?" And I said, "No." So there's a term,
Right.
what do you call it? Like a schwa or
Oh
something?
yeah, there we add a schwa to it
Yeah, a
to make it
schwa.
the schwa. And I really think that, we came back after COVID and we had the masks on. And this is when I was starting to really start to read as much as I could, and I was taking in all this information, and I'd have my mask on, and I'm teaching first grade, and I'm trying to accentuate what I'm saying through the mask, and I'm going, "Fa," I'm saying or "Ba," and I thought, "Wait a minute, this is what they're talking about. Clip that sound. Know that if you say the sound that F spells, your voice is off. So clipping that sound." So I really, I'd have to step back, dip my mask down, look at my mouth, listen to what I'm saying, because I think that really helped me realize articulation. And then from there, it was happening before COVID and after still, but having the mask on for myself.
Give us a couple examples. Say the letter D sound.
D-
Say the
It
letter F sound. So it's so interesting because I think so many of us would say "duh" rather than
right.
"duh." and
Mhm.
would say, "Fa," and you did it one more time for me?
D and so it's harder to
And
hear
why
probably.
and why is that important? Why is it important that we teach the right sounds and we articulate the right sounds for children to correspond that to letters?
Yes, this is great because we can see a lot of errors in spelling and reading. If everybody right now puts their hand on their throat and do the sound that, I'm sorry, that V makes. So,
Ugh,
and you hear your
ugh.
voice move, right? So your voice is on for the V. Now, think about with your lips, your mouth, your teeth, everything is doing and do the same sound that F spells. F and V have the same articulation happening in our mouth. It's just our voice is on and off. So you might see students spell a word with a V when it should be an F, or vice versa, because they are getting confused on their voice on and off. So I'm not a speech therapist and or path, and those people are amazing at what they do. But that little bit of knowledge has helped me realize, oh, you're having this error in your reading or your spelling because you're thinking your voice should be on and off, or your tongue is not in the right place, or there's a million different ways to now decipher errors of our students with having that little bit of little tiny nugget of speech and sound wall information.
And did your school have a curriculum that was based on the science of reading, or were you doing
No,
it all on your own?
I was doing this pretty much on my own. Past districts, it was a very balanced literacy curriculum. When I moved to my current district, they were already open to some ideas, and I think they already were starting like, well, we're not really pushing leveling of readers. So I feel like the knowledge was starting to happen, and people were starting like, this isn't great, but we don't know what we should do instead.
Mhm.
Um, so I was doing a lot on my own, and I would come in with my books and I go see my reading specialist. She's a good friend of mine now, and I'd be like, you know what? I just read this. She goes, I've started to read that too, and we realized we had a connection. So I think when that started to happen, she's like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna talk to him, and she has just taken off. And now our district is doing a our own scope and sequence, our own continuum, and adding decodables, and the leveled readers are getting boxed up and the decodables are coming in. So changes are being made in my district, and it's so exciting to see the teachers starting to learn and all of
So
that.
we hear a lot now, Fontes and Pinnell leveled
Mm,
readers are out, decodables are in. What does
mhm.
that mean? What is a leveled reader and why is it out? And what is a decodable text and why is it in?
So a leveled reader was written by, yes, some big curricula companies have decided. So we have Fontes and Pinnell, and Teachers College, I think, was one. Whatever the different curriculums are. I've only been familiar with FMP, but they come up with their own leveling system. So that was another aha moment for me too. Side note was like, I'd look and be like, well, my daughter's a level, J at her school, and my student in FMP is an H, and then their H is a J, and so I'm like, well, wait, this isn't a true universal way to say who's a reader, anyways, if their systems were created by companies selling books. So that was one other thing I should have said. But leveled readers are based on a leveling system that the company creates. It is not following an explicit phonics scope and sequence. It's maybe an A book will say the dog, the big dog, the red dog, so it's only using minimal phrases, repetitive phrases, so that is on that memorization thing that we now know is not good, so repetitive, and it encourages them to look at the picture for a word they don't know. So a leveled reader is based on, there might be some high frequency words in there, but there might be the word elephant in a level A book where that's a huge word for a kindergartner. We haven't taught them those skills. And PH says, I mean, that is not something a kindergartner should know. So it
So it's
decode.
not
Go ahead.
so it's not corresponding to the structure and the sequence of what kids are learning. And
Exactly.
when my son was in a school using leveled readers and I would look at them, it seemed to me that the books that were A, the very beginning, just as you described, had
Hmm.
fewer words and often shorter words, and then B would have a bit more words and a little bit longer words, and then C would have a bit more, and as you went along, it's just more and more text and more words, but not necessarily corresponding to what he was learning at that time. Is that an
Exactly.
okay way to summarize
That is a
that?
great way to say it. It's so now that we know, so that's balanced literacy. Structured literacy, we follow a very explicit and systematic phonics pattern on top of everything else we're teaching parts of reading, but being very explicit about what we teach. So if this week in my classroom, we're working on L consonant blends, so blends that have an L in the first two consonants, our decodable reader that we're reading, a decodable or connected text, will only have phonics skills that I've already taught, high
Mhm.
frequency words that I've already taught, and then our new skill will be the focus, and that will be what we're working on. So I haven't taught digraphs yet to my first graders, so a decodable text will not have any digraphs, things like that, or any long vowels, because we haven't done that yet. So decodable is there, and the best way to describe it is like training wheels. They're not forever. They're not. They're, a lot of people are worried they're not content rich text. Well, that's not the point. The point is like training wheels to get the child reading, and then we take that away, and then we can add the content rich
So if
text.
you're teaching consonant L blends, you're teaching SL slap,
Hmm.
CL clap, and then you
Exactly.
would expect slap and clap and flap to
Hmm.
be in that book, or
Exactly.
clean maybe, or trying to think of others.
Yeah.
But words that replicate that CL or that SL,
Right.
that FL, or bland, your BL, in that book so that they're seeing those patterns again and again that you were
Exactly.
teaching them, and they're being able to connect in reading, in
Hmm.
text, that skill that they learned, and then it shows up in the
Exactly.
book, and they're repeating it, and so it's helping them experience it really, it's helping them
Right.
apply it maybe.
Exactly. And yes, and with nothing that they haven't learned, to not hold them up with the reading process. So their brain is free just to work on what we've taught and practice skills that they already know.
So they're really repeating and practicing to build more mastery rather than trying to stretch to things that are new that they haven't really even mastered what's come before. So you're
Exactly.
shoring up the foundation in a way, bit by
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
Explain what structured explicit literacy is. It's a term now that's almost becoming a buzzword.
It
Explain
is.
what that really is. So if a teacher hears, I'm supposed to be doing structured explicit literacy, what does that
Hmm.
mean?
So structure, from what I've understand, because I've looked up the history a little bit, we can go into the history, I guess, a little bit. But Orton Gillingham Academy, that's who I was trained with. They it, the academy had numerous names before, but Orton Gillingham, the approach, has a bunch of principles, including multisensory learning, explicit, prescriptive, systematic. So when I'm drawing a blank on Dr. Orton created an organization, and that is now the IDA. So there is somebody can look up that history. There's a long connection there, but now that's the International Dyslexia Association. And they coined the structured literacy term to umbrella all of the Orton Gillingham approach and any other multisensory approaches that have started since. So, structured literacy is an umbrella term for a multisensory approach to teaching. So, what that means is we know we are trained, or we know how the brain learns to read. We are going to start from the bottom and teach phonics, and we are going to go slow as we have to, but as quick as we can. I think Anna Gillingham said something like that. So we are going to do what the student needs. It's prescriptive. Multisensory means we're using kinesthetic, tactile, auditory, visual. It doesn't mean we have all these gadgets and trinkets. We're just connecting, channeling different parts of the brain to help the child learn. And we're doing it in a way that makes sense. We're not going to teach them, a short A word one day and now teach them how to drop the E in a suffix or something. We're going to
So it's very
building blocks.
sort of systematic in terms of the structure of language, and
Yes.
you're building it bit by bit with more and more sophistication, but you're starting as simple and then kind of building, I guess, building the house in a very
Right.
sequential, very explicit way that relates to how a child actually develops the neural pathways to connect it all and to start to learn this skill of reading.
Exactly.
Because as you said at the
Exactly.
beginning, we're not born
Yeah.
to read, we're born to talk, but to
Hmm.
read is a learned skill. Just like
Exactly.
doing long division, we're not born to do that.
Yes.
We actually have to be taught how to do long
Right.
division. Later, we can use our computer or
Oh,
our
see, I know.
smartphone,
Now
but
it's
we have
right
to
here
be
for us.
taught how to do
Yes.
long division.
Yes.
So, for the teachers out there that are
Mhm.
thinking, oh no, I've been teaching balanced literacy, but I really care about my students and I really want to be high impact and I really want to make a difference. That's why I came into this profession was to help children.
Right.
What do you say to them? Like, what are the ways they can start learning more? How do they get some of the skills that you've learned? Tips of the trade?
Yes, and I get that a lot on my Instagram, and a lot of teachers are, still held down to what they're required in their district. Um, but I would say if you can start as small as getting your hands on some decodable text, there is a lot of free available out there. It doesn't have to be an actual published book. You can find them on Teachers to Pay Teachers and print out a text for your students. I actually do that quite often because then we can write in it and code in it. So try to add decodable text to your small group instruction or your whole group, um, before you're adding that leveled reader in, and also doing some word mapping activities. So again, that is as simple as creating a sheet with boxes that represent the sounds and teaching a student that the word, let's say that, doesn't have four letters, it has three sounds. So in that first sound box, the digraph TH is representing a sound. So we're going to spell that sound in that box instead of saying, oh, four letters, THAT. Yeah. No, it is at that, and doing things like that.
Which is really different than t h at t hat tat.
Right.
It's
And
at
uh,
at.
exactly.
Give us
Exactly. And that
another.
was one of the,
Oh,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Sorry. No, please.
No, that was another big aha moment I had because we do have word walls in our school, and students would go up to the word wall, and I had it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and under T would be TH words, including whatever other two, and a student would be standing there and said, where is that? And I go under T. Well, how would they know that that is under T? Because that doesn't start with T. So something as simple as like that is like, oh yes, we need to teach the sounds to help connect to the print. Just the letter by the shape itself is not teaching us how to read.
So sh would be another example, right?
Yep.
So sh
Yep.
is not h, it's sh.
Exactly.
And they have to
Yep.
learn that that pattern of an s and an h represents
Exactly.
shut rather than
Exactly.
ut.
Right.
Which is not
Yes.
English is tricky, but we have a whole set of combinations of 2 letters that make a single sound, opposed to 2
Exactly.
individual sounds.
Yes. Yes.
So are there a couple of books you would recommend that teachers read to just begin to understand the science?
Yeah, I will tell you what I started with. So Uncovering the Logic of English and by Denise, I think I'm saying that. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong. Uncovering the Logic of English and the ABCs and all their tricks. These books used to be in my teacher bag all the time. Now I'm getting a little bit more confident, but these teach you all the tricks of English because what we learned in all this is that English is not weird. It does make sense a majority of the time. I think it's like 90 something percent of the time if you know the rules and generalizations. So these two books, the ABCs and all their tricks and uncovering the logic of English really helped me learn the rules fast and the generalizations.
Really interesting.
Shifting the balance, the six
Okay.
ways to bring science of reading into the balanced literacy classroom by Birkins and Gates is awesome and so easy to read. You can see my book. I know the listener
And
reader can't. Do you
all the
see all the
tags.
tabs?
I love it.
This it's like, it is really nice and easy to read from a teacher standpoint and to get what you need. So it's 6 ways to bring structured literacy into a balanced literacy classroom. So this was great, and I actually think I kind of want to read it, even though it might not apply too much to me. This is the K through second book. They just came out with the third through fifth book.
Oh, that's
So that's
great.
good to know. Now, if you really want to get technical, Equipped for Reading Success by Kilpatrick and Speech to Print by Mode. So these two are very good, but these are heavy reads where I had to go back and reread a lot because it really explains the science. It gives you a lot of great tips, but these two are not the kind you can
Thanks.
watch TV while you read.
I
Um,
actually got the one by Kilpatrick.
oh, you do?
Um,
Yeah.
well, I got it in my early stages a couple of years ago, and I was diving deep, and I thought it was gonna be my bedtime reading.
Oh,
Not bedtime reading. That is
no,
more
it is not.
coffee when you are really fresh because
Yes.
that is too hard for bedtime reading.
It is not a beach read. Let's
It
put
is
it that way,
not
not
a
a beach
beach read.
read. And then the last two, Reading Above the Fray was one of my most recent ones. This book is awesome, and she really takes into account the research and makes you feel good as a teacher of what you're doing and what you're not, and simplifies it. And she really wrote this, from what I understood, not really from the standpoint of saying balanced literacy is bad, but just more, this is what we know. This is research. This is not research. So this is a really good, easy book for teachers, Reading Above the Fray. And if you really want a good, like, cheeky Reading for Life by Lynn Stone, like, I don't think she means to be humorous, but she is feisty about how she feels about balanced literacy, and it is in this book. And I personally really enjoyed reading it because I like how she put things. But somebody said she's like, oh, she's really like, I don't know how this person put it when I said I was reading it, but I was like, "Oh, I guess she is," but I kinda like that sense of humor and that kind of, gumption or something for how she felt about it. So, that is
Those
you
are amazing tips
yeah.
those are amazing. Last question,
Yes.
parents. I get
Mhm.
so many calls from parents or text or emails saying, "Help, what do I do? My kid's struggling." What do you tell parents? Are there a couple of things they can do to start with or a few tips?
Yeah, I would tell them too, if I know it's a lot of information to take in, and not to worry so much about learning the science if you trust it behind how the brain learns to read. I would say, you know, I'm gonna plug your game because it is a great way to do so. Kangaroo Cravings is a great way to practice at home and to learn that when your child is practicing their spelling words at home, to not just have them repetitively write it. Try to help them connect the sound to print. So instead of, if they're practicing the word, um, I keep thinking of, let's do chat. Don't just say CHAT says chat. No, CH so have them say the sound as they're writing the symbol that matches it, not the letter, it's the symbol, because it could be
Mhm.
more than one letter saying a sound.
Oh,
So
that's
practicing like that. And if you can, I don't want to like add more contacting the teacher to see, but if you can get your hand on some decodable text, whether you can find some that you can get. I know libraries won't carry that because it's not really, like I said, a content rich, it's more for
we're
learning.
hoping that libraries will start carrying
I
it.
know, that would
All
be
families
awesome.
have access. That's what we
Yes,
need to have a big push on.
that is a great idea. Because you go in there and you're like, "I need a level C book." Well, again, level C is different from company to company when it comes to levels. But yes, so I would say if you're able to get some decodable text, and for fluency, have your child reread what they can read confidently, not frustration. We don't want them to be frustrated, but there is a book that your child can read pretty well. Have them reread it a few times. Research recently that I heard, so don't completely quote me, is that after about 3 times of fluently reading something, you can move on to something else. Like, you don't need to repetitively kill and drill something 100 times, but practicing something your child is confident in reading. Um, I would tell parents and just to ask questions at your district. How are they teaching your child to read? What can they do at home besides just exposing them to more books?
Yeah, yeah, because
Mhm.
I always hear we want kids to love to read, so we're gonna give them a lot of books, and I always say, "Kids in a beanbag, not able to read with a bunch of books does not make a kid love
Right.
reading. It makes a kid really frustrated, so we have to actually teach them this skill so that they become lovers of reading."
100%. That is the one, and I think that's what broke my heart the most. Is like I had the means to kind of get my daughter a comfy beanbag chair and buy her the books and do this and do that. And I was doing all the things they said, get her comfy and reading, and it wasn't working. So, yeah, it's an ideology of being like, oh, that would be beautiful, but not all kids are going to love to read. Our goal is not to get kids to love to read. And that's what I think structured literacy realizes too. We have to learn to read so we can read to learn. And not
Then we
everybody's
can
going to
love
love
to
it.
read. If
Yeah,
we can read really well, it's a lot
right.
more fun. It's a lot more
Exactly.
enjoyable. Gina, did you see a change in outcomes for your kids, your students, when you were doing balanced literacy for a number of years and then you switched to using explicit structured literacy, teaching children how to read based on evidence and science? Did you see a change? Did you see more children taking off better? What did you see in your kids?
I did. I honestly did. You can see it in your students. You can see it in their scores. You can see that they're becoming more confident readers. They are taking their time as readers. I think that's another thing that we need to realize. Balanced literacy's goal is, to go 0 to 60 with reading. For structured literacy, it's going to take a while. And some kids, it might take a real long while, but they'll get there using a very systematic approach. But I notice my kids, it's so magical to see them go up to the sound wall, not the word wall, and look, oh, this sound is with this. They're looking at the picture, and I see it in their spelling. So I see it in all these things, and it's just wonderful.
Gina, thank you. Thank you so
Oh,
much
thank
for
you.
talking
You're
to us
welcome.
late at night for you
Yeah.
after a long day of teaching and you're tutoring students after school. I don't really know how you do all this, but really grateful that you've become a spokesperson for so many teachers and have really been able to share practices and help other teachers make this journey to be
Oh,
more
thank
effective
you.
in the classroom and to have more impact. So, thank you for everything you're doing. We really
Oh,
appreciate your time.
thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Really happy to have you. Thank
Yes.
you.